A pivot chart is a way to analyze your data using an interactive chart, and it's based upon a pivot table. In other words, you cannot create a pivot chart without the pivot table. There are two ways you can create a pivot chart. If you already got a pivot table, then just go ahead and select any cell within the pivot table. Come up here and click on the Analyze tab. Go to the Tools group and click on Pivot Chart. And then go ahead and choose one. I'm going to go with this one and double click. And there you go. Of course, let me close out of the field list. Click and drag the chart over. Hover over the bottom right hand corner handle, resizing handle, and then click and drag that out so we can see more of it. And click and drag the right middle handle. And you can see the companies, and the companies had made purchases for these products. And here are the totals and sales here, which isn't too bad. Hopefully it's in millions of dollars. In any case, there's the pivot chart. And you can go ahead and analyze it interactively with these fields that it's based upon over here. You can see the salesperson is a filter field. You can click on the drop down arrow and say, look, I just want to go ahead and see the sales for Bob Appleman. Click Okie dokie. And he made sales for mountain camping, and what he sold to them was the fort tent, screen tent, and tiki torch. You can see the funnels there, but also the funnels next to the interactive field on the pivot chart. You can click on the drop down arrow, also make the selection there as well, and click Okie dokie, and we're back to where we started. You can also, just like when we learned in formatting our charts in an earlier training video, even though it's a pivot chart, it's still a chart, so you can still add access titles, format the chart title, even change it. So the default is total. Let's come up here after we have selected it and click in the formula bar and say it's going to be the salesperson's performance. Hit enter and updates the chart title, nifty. You can go ahead and right click on the chart, change the chart type to any other charts you'd like. Come up here, click on the design tab, choose a chart style, change the chart colors, add chart elements. Again, if you want to watch my training video on charts, it's pretty much everything that I would want you to learn there that I'm not going to be covering here because we already covered it. The only difference between a pivot chart and a chart is that, well, with the pivot chart, you can pivot between the data. It's interactive. With the chart, it's not interactive. You don't get these drop-down arrows. Now, like I said, there's more than one way to create a pivot chart. It has to be based upon a pivot table. So since I already had my pivot table, it was easy to create. If I didn't have one and I'm starting from scratch, I can come over here to my data range on sheet 1, select any cell within it, then come up here, click on the Insert tab, go to the Charts group and click on Pivot Chart, and it selects my range automatically for me. And do I want to add it to a new worksheet or the existing? And the location within this existing worksheet, click on its collapsible dialog box button, choose a cell, hit enter, hit enter. There's the pivot table, it put it there, but I wanted to insert the pivot chart. Remember that you cannot have a pivot chart without the pivot table. That's the reason why I don't insert it within the same worksheet, because I don't feel like I got enough room, at least without having to scroll around, and also working with the field list here. So if I go ahead and undo that, let's do it again. Insert pivot chart to a new worksheet, click Okie dokie. There we go. Okay, pivot table. Now when it comes to creating my pivot chart, it says to build it, go ahead and choose fields from the list here. Well, that's easy. Just go ahead and we'll select company, salesperson, and the products that were sold. And while we have all that, we do need a value so we can start charting it. And which fields contain values? Well, we've got the price each, or the quantity, or the total in sales there. It doesn't look too good. Let me go ahead and rearrange this. Let's click and drag the salesperson, so they're the filter for the report here. And so right now it's set to all salespeople. And then I can go ahead and click on the drop down arrow and let me do select multiple items, uncheck all, do it for Danny DeVito, click Okie dokie, and close out. There's the pivot chart. So you got to have a pivot table before you can create the pivot chart. And then once you have the pivot chart, if you want to move your chart, as we learned in our charts training video, you can go ahead and right click and say you want to move it. Now the pivot table and pivot chart don't have to be on the same worksheet. So I can move this chart to a new sheet, and the default name's chart 1. I can rename it and call it Spiffy Chart, and then go ahead and click Okie dokie. Whatever I do here, it will obviously filter for and click Okie dokie. And then of course, whatever I do back in pivot table on sheet 5, it will update that chart as well. So if I just do it for Britt and Danny, click Okie dokie, go back to the Spiffy chart. Well, it's for those salespeople there. When I click on the drop-down arrow, Britt and Danny DeVito there. So there's all the sales that they made collectively for Family Campers, Mirror Lake Sports, and Mountain Camping, the companies, and the products that were sold to those companies. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.